to the Backyard Professor Chess videos. We have a fantastic Lopez with Bobby Fischer. I love this game because I'm going to be able to show you how the various elements that I've been saying for years in my games, in my videos, come together and how it logically follows what happens when you do certain types of strategies, how one strategy leads into another. I love how this works with this particular Bobby Fischer game. This is a sweet Lopez, man. Bobby's going to castle early, which is typical in the Lopez, definitely. B5, now he's going to chase Bobby's bishop back. And that's in a good order, and then support that central pawn fundamentally. He bumps the c pawn to give his bishop one more escape because he's got two advanced pawns on this wing already, yeah? So he wants to give himself an out. That's very important. And then he'll put the pin on the knight to the queen. Bobby says, let's tickle you and see what you do. He puts the bishop back to h5. Now, rather than pursuing that bishop and messing up his king side, there's no reason to. Don't do that if you can help it. This is a much better approach. Solidify your center. Now we're seeing that there's quite a few items in the center. So we understand that his opponent's going to get ready to castle, and because of the nature of this center, now nothing's coming crashing through on any of the diagonals, on any of the files, on any of the rows. The center is pretty much stuffed, more or less. So, what Bobby does next makes beautiful sense. Now, he's not fully developed, understand that. He's going to begin his further development. The center has been taken care of, right? And his opponent castles. So his opponent is going to do the same thing, more or less. Now this is typical of the Lopez. Put the rook on the e file. Sure, absolutely. Queen d7. Now this is interesting because it's not a blunder, but it's out of order. The main line is to bring your knight to the a5 and then secure for yourself the knight to c6, or else bump this c5 up to continue to try to fight for the center. That would be the ideal. He did not do that. Instead, he moved his queen up, and because of that, Bobby now puts his knight to f1. And then he goes to knight a5. Now he does the knight a5, and of course Bobby will keep his bishop. There's no reason to let him have his bishop, and he's going to go to h6. He's simply leaving himself an out for the king, right? Technically, I mean, he didn't induce a weakness on the g6. True, there's still only just one pawn, but that's not a crisis. Now, interestingly enough, Bobby presses that g-pawn. And you're going, wait a minute, man. Isn't that wrecking your king side? There's nothing that's going to get in at this point. The queen is hitting granite here. And it does, this is granite here. This is granite here. So it limits the queen diagonal, and it definitely keeps this bishop locked in. Notice that bishop is locked in. Very interesting strategy here. So he did not make a mistake, and now Bobby is going to reposition his knight. And you say, well, he's not as fully developed as he could be. This is true, and I know I've harped on that. It's develop one, maybe two moves. You know, if you're wandering around without purpose instead of developing, that's one thing. but the center is pretty secure for both sides, so Bobby has taken a really nice knight trip over to here to reposition his knight. That's not a waste of time. That's a repositioning. And it looks to me like his opponent's going to do the same thing. And look at that. No sooner than I speak than Bobby obeys. That's a great outpost. No, it's not permanent, but that's a great outpost. I mean, wow. That's beautiful chess right there. It was worth repositioning his knight here rather than having him over here, wasn't it? Or here. So you can see the difference. That knight was worth taking two. If it would have taken 3 extra moves, that's fine. Here is okay, but again, we want to maximize the optimal squares for our pieces, and this coming here, here to here has been worth it. Look at that position now. Only because the center is secure, however. That's how it follows that strategy. Had they been really rough and tumbling for the center up to this point, I don't think we would have seen that knight trip of Bobby. But here we are, and here he is. Now the knight to b7. Now this is the first mistake. I mean, it's a blunder. What we're about to see is going to logically follow just that simple move. That's remarkable, isn't it? Just one simple bad move. And you say, well, he wasn't keeping the knight on the rim. That is correct. That's true. He would have been better here, although that's not the move you want to make either if you can at all help it. Because you're keeping your c-pawn backward. You have a center to fight for. Now it's true, here you are contacting the central squares. So, I mean, let's give it credit where credit would be due, but truly the move is this one. Yeah. Now because that he did not bump up the pawn like this, watch how the logical consequence follows of how Bobby performed this next series of moves. This is really wonderful. E4. I mean, C4. C4. Bobby's going to go ahead and start advancing. And this is so interesting. I meant D4. I apologize. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, Bobby isn't going to Mickey Mouse with these guys. D4. This is how he does it. He advances straight up the center. The knight move did not prevent Bobby from advancing the pawns. There's a logical consequence here, a strategy of center, pawn moves, etc. Had he done that, that move wouldn't have been available for. Now, that doesn't help him. And it's amazing because that's the most protected square on the center, isn't it? 2 knights and a pawn. And yet that wouldn't have helped him as good. And a queen, as far as that goes. But he didn't. So, this is the move that really begins Bobby's conquest. It's very fun to see this. E will take D4. C will take D4. And you say, well, not a lot has changed. That might be correct, but it has changed. That's what we want to see. Bobby has 2 central pawns together. Black does not. Believe it or not, something that simple makes the difference in this game. Isn't that fun? The little stuff, the little stuff. Knight D8. His opponent is going to seek to reposition his knight so that it can begin to get into the center because he blew it with his pawns. Let's see what happens. Now, because he's on the march here, Bobby goes ahead and exchanges the bishop. And the queen will take. Very nice, very nice. And now, boink, d5. Here we go. Bobby is marching. There is no real attack or emphasis on the wings on either side, yes? So, this simple little pawn move gains space. It's done in the correct area of the board. The reason we want to gain space is it is easier to coordinate our pieces either for offense or defense. It's that simple. Silman emphasized it, Yusupov emphasized it. Anytime you can gain space in the center, do so, it's correct. Nice to know, real nice to know. And now comes c5. However, he's a penny short. He's just too short with that. Rather than take it en passant now, don't take that en passant. You have a good center. Were you to take that en passant, look at how powerful black would be, right? So that would be a major flub. Don't take the pawn en passant just because an option is given to you. In this instance, no. Let's see what the better move is. Development, of course, bishop f4. And now he has advanced his pawns. He still has both of his central pawns. Nice. Now he can further his development. Nice, right? So, and see, that knight has now been rendered useless for the center. So there's a logical consequence when this happens, and that's what this game illustrates so fantastically. Now, this square is not available for the knight to jump into because Bobby advanced the pawn. So had he not advanced the pawn, this knight would have been here, which is really good behind the c pawn. Now, that would have made black very happy, right? Yeah, instead, he's forced from d8 to there because Bobby took his squares away from him. And that is really important. Very interesting. So he still doesn't have compensation for this. Bishop will bounce to g3. Rook f to e8. Get your rook. Get your rook activated without question. And now, so your center is secure. Now let's take out a wing. And there are better options at this point. You see the impression here that black is fundamentally cramped on that king side, isn't he? Because of that central pawn thrust. So Bobby is going to clarify the other wing, why not? So that there are no surprises, and then squeeze his opponent. That's a fabulous strategy here. Yeah. Queen will come to f6, again trying to expand, looking at fancy plays like this that might get tricky and make you wonder, oh gee, should I protect that pawn? Forget about it. That is not a threat. There is a vastly superior play to make. This. You push the pawn, take it. Now truly, the nature of this particular wing approach is that there's no question he has to, if he takes that pawn with the queen, that's absolutely silly. He can take that pawn and he's got a passed pawn. Well, that's suicide. So this pawn is safe. You don't have to worry about wasting a move, doing this, or doing this, or even doing this. For crying out loud, why would you move your queen off the D file? That would make no sense. So he knew he would exchange, of course. Now that makes sense. That would be how to do it. And now, what this does, opens up that A file, doesn't it, for the rooks? So it's not that there's danger here, but watch how Bobby handles this. This is cool. King G2. In looking forward, now that the A file is open, and yeah, true, the rooks are opposing each other, it's time to avoid any back rank checkmates. Just bump your king up and let's get that out of your mind, because there's bigger fish to fry. So this is a very interesting, almost prophylactic move on Fischer's part. Prophylactic isn't the quite word, but quite the right word, but this is a fabulous idea. And now, let's give credit where credit's due. The knight has been here for a couple of moves, yes. And when you look at this, when you look at black's position, number one, it really is cramped. And that knight is the worst piece. This knight really doesn't inspire a whole lot of confidence either, but that knight is really bad, so it makes sense to move the knight. Get the knight into the game. Let's bump out. That's a great move. It really is. That makes beautiful sense. However, he will exchange it, sure. Exchange it. The knight coming out so that Bobby would exchange it is a better position for him than leaving it back on 8-7. You notice something remarkable? Because black has less space, something I've talked about, he really can't get coordination between the pieces and pawns, so he's beginning to exchange so that he can have more space. And that is a good strategy when you're cramped. Yeah? However, this does benefit Bobby. Why does this benefit Bobby? I'm going to keep this simple and clear. That guy and that guy. Bobby has the center, and he's got the space. Watch how this makes a difference. This is so awesome. Bobby goes ahead and takes the rook. Now, he says, yeah, now it's time. Pulls the trigger. Watch this. Watch this. Bobby took the rook off of the E file. Now, granted, technically, that's a passed pawn. It's not going to get in. Technically, it's not a passed pawn, but it is. There's no pawn directly opposing it stopping, although it's not going to get in yet. But the maneuvering, what belongs behind passed pawns? Rooks. Notice how Bobby has coordinated things. That's what I wanted to point out. It logically follows that he's better coordinated, and ta-da! Yes, yes, yes. Remember, he took care of this side. And you say, well, the black has an open file. That is entirely correct, yes. But it's way over here. It doesn't necessarily enter the game just yet. So there's no reason for Bobby to try to overly worry about it. It's vastly superior with your rook on the E and your queen on the D, even though those two are blocked. The bishop here pointing the way, the bishop here pointing the way. It really is a splendid move to keep gaining central space. Isn't that fun? Now watch what happens. The logical consequence of Bobby having the better center is about to reveal itself in a magnificent way. And of course, the bishop will exchange the bishop. Yeah. Again, the theme for black is to, now you can see he's breathing a little easier, yes? He's not nearly as cramped. On the other hand, there's some brutal stuff going on here. He had the chance to take the queen, right? But then he would lose his queen. Because Bobby has the better center, it made better sense for him to keep pieces on. You don't want to trade down too far or you don't have an attack. And you have the better center, so at this point, don't swap the queens. Go ahead and let the bishops come off the board. And again, the pawn takes the pawn. Now this is true. The black pawn is a passed pawn. But so is this little squirt. This guy and this guy we have to keep our eyes on now, because they've got a free run. So how do we deal with this? Bobby takes it out right now. Nice, yeah? Because he had the better space. Bobby is more coordinated. Yeah? You see that? Isn't that a beautiful coordination of rook and bishop? You want to see something interesting? This actually might have been the stronger play. So it's nice because he took the time to keep that center strong. And he has been pushing it. It's nice to know that you've got some options, and either way, they're coordinated. That's kind of cool to see. Either direction. Bobby chose this one. Tickle the queen. Of course, the queen's going to come down to D. The queen is not forced there, but she is. Because now this guy's the passed pawn. And with passed pawns, it's really weird. The rule with passed pawns, the reason Bobby has the passed pawn is because he kept the strong center and he kept it advancing. Yeah? Right? Well, when you get a passed pawn, we'll see all the pieces congregate. This little squirt is now the most dangerous piece on the chessboard. And both players react really strongly to this piece, of course. Now the game is decided on one pawn. Fascinating how this works through. So, and queen comes to D8, and there you have it. There you have it. Nice little lesson here. Look. You've got the passed pawn. Push it. Fundamentally so. Get that little squirt going. Now, by all means, this pawn has to be watched. And his opponent, rather than taking the pawn, pushes his own. So, I mean, he's got a pair of connected pawns on the wing, but they aren't nearly as far as this kid, right? So this kid definitely needs the attention from both players. And let's see how they do this. Oh, nice. Very nice. Again, the theme, and this follows logically based upon the strategy. This is beautiful. The queen is okay here. I mean, she is keeping an eye, although it's guarded, so she's keeping an eye on the pawns, but there's a better place to keep an eye on the pawns, and that is directly in the center. Now that's power chess. Fabulous. Even approaching the end game, develop into the center. I'll let you tell me Who said that? Yeah, 5 points. Also 5 points for someone who said the lust of the passed pawn to expand is the reason why the ultimate strategy, if you don't have the passed pawn, is to blockade that passed pawn. Who said that? I'll let you think about that and give it to me in the comments. Very nice. Knight c5. Okay, he's trying to... Here's the deal. Here's the deal. Because of the nature of the passed pawn, when we look at this board, we can see Bobby's queen is in a far better position than the opponent's. Bobby's rook is in a much better position than this rook. True, it's on an open file, but to what effect in this particular case, it's almost a waste of time to worry about that open file. It serves no purpose in the game. The purpose now has become this little squirt. So the bishop is better placed than the minor piece because why is the bishop better? One, he's grandly centralized. Two, the bishop is the correct color. The bishop is the color of the queening square. So, Bobby definitely has the advantage here. The trick is you got to open up that queening square. Can he do it? Blink. Bobby goes queen c6. Now, the better move is at d5, right? And here's why. Because, and now the knight will come to d3. Now, come on, it's a good outpost. It's a great fork. He forks the rook and the bishop. Again, knights are tricky pieces. You got to kind of keep your eye on them, yes? In this instance, it doesn't have a lot of... There's more heat than light here because Bobby just simply puts his rook up. Of course, that's not a big crisis at all. And now, rook c8. And you see now, hold on. Hold on, the rook did have the open file. Why not come down to here? If you were thinking something along those lines, you have not been paying attention. All of black's energy must be focused on this little squirt. I'm serious. Notice how all of white's energy is beginning to focus around this little squirt. So this would have been horrifyingly bad. Pay attention, keep closer in conjunction with this passed pawn, tickle the queen. Get the queen out of here. Get out of here, ma'am. So she goes to queen b7, he goes to rook b8, and now he comes back to the d5 where the pawn is shielding between the rook and the queen. Not bad. The queen is also pushing the pawn in. That's exceptional. And the bishop is the same color as the queening square, that white pawn. Black is in trouble here. All of this follows as a consequence of Fischer maintaining that strong and mobile pawn center. Piece by piece, or square by square, he kept pushing each pawn. That's key. This is the consequence. Once you recognize what to focus on, the passed pawn, then you're in a great position. So this is, he's in trouble, and knight comes back to b4, tickle the queen. Yeah, all right. But that doesn't help him. c5. And now again, knight d3. Again, a great outpost, but it would be better if he could put the... See, black is entirely passively defensive. We can see that, right? Because of that wonderful passed pawn. So it would be ideal, rather than having his strongest piece babysit that passed pawn, if he could somehow find a way to put the knight in front of that passed pawn and open up so that the queen can be a much more aggressive piece. But she has to stay home. Either her or the rook, someone's got to stay home here. There's no question now, right? So you can see Bobby is playing a superb game. This really doesn't help him at all. Queen will come to, let's see, 93. Queen comes to, I don't know why I have. Oh, no. Queen went to here. Queen went to c5. I apologize. I put her wrong. I put her at 6. She comes to 5. And that's why he put the knight, yes, to fork the queen. And now that he did that, the queen goes to d4. There. That's the look I wanted to see. Yeah. Again, total centralization. Queen to d4 here. And just power movement. Now, we have another issue here. The queen coupled with the bishop means this pawn is in danger. At this point, that's the kid to watch. You can't worry about your little squirt. This is a complete waste of a move. Ironically enough, you wouldn't think it was, but it is. Here's why. Knight d3, queen d4, rook b6. Because you have to keep your eye on the passed pawn. That's why. And if you're white, you have to keep your eye on the passed pawn. So that tells us Bobby's next move. Ta-da! Kablam, baby! Now the queen is permanently stuck. She is babysitting. She's been babysitting. Have you noticed the queen have been moving, the black queen? Yeah, he has completely reduced her to defense. And that's fantastic if you can do that with the passed pawn, as opposed to a knight. And it's true, he's got a great outpost, but that knight is out of whack. That knight is out of play entirely. So rook to b7. Again, you must focus on that passed pawn. And now for the real kicker. Bishop to c7. Ouch. The logical consequence of expanding in the center, the logical consequence in the middle game of Bobby Fischer maintaining a stronger presence in the center, not only through the occupation with his pawns, but the occupation of the center with his pieces, as we still see. You notice his opponent never challenged his e-file. Bobby had it, he's kept it, and look at its power. Yes, this is phenomenal. The logical consequence of this is a complete reduction to defense, and now you're in deep trouble. You're in real deep trouble. Now, if you think that that rook has a free bishop, you had better think again. You haven't been paying attention to the beautiful strategies of the rooks on the open files, because you have a wicked fork right there. Check with the fork to the queen, and this game is over. So the bishop can't be taken by the rook. Of course not. And if you think, well, that's... Remember, the strategy is get the pawn in. Well, the queen's in the way, so threaten her. Get her off of the way. Bobby was probably hoping he would do this, in which case you simply go check. Bump in your queen. The king darn sure isn't going to just move out of the way, right? The queen has to take, and then you've got the queen. That's how powerful those passed pawns are. This is a fantastic lesson for that. Yeah, right? So, that move is the move I do believe. Oh, nope, he didn't. He came to knight f4, check once. He did a spite check. And Bobby just simply goes to f1. And you say, well, now hold on, you're in the end game and you said to centralize the king and all that. Correct, In this instance, Bobby avoids any wild knight forks of his king with another piece, or of his queen and rook, etc. No monkeying around. The next move, black has nothing to do. Can you see that? That's why black resigned here at this point. Now this is a wonderful Lopez, where each of the various, and they are simple strategies to understand. I mean, you can hear them elaborated on and talked about in videos like I'm doing, but putting them into your game demonstrates why you want to fight for the center. It demonstrates why you want to put your pieces on the maximal squares. It demonstrates why, if you have a center that's occupied with pawns, if you can keep that center mobile, then that's excellent. It demonstrates why the pawn deserves a piece behind it so that it can expand forward. And we saw Bobby expanding that pawn forward non-stop, which completely put his opponent on the defense. He had to play reaction chess. Bobby had the initiative in this game very early. In fact, my thinking is the moment we saw that knight from A5 go to B7, that's when Bobby grabbed the initiative and he never looked back. Fantastic game. Absolutely wonderful. So, there is your Backyard Professor Chess video. Be good, do well, have fun, make lots of friends, stay happy, and I will see you in the next Backyard Professor Chess video.